So shall we begin, Heather? What do you think? It's after 7. And Sarah's has not joined us yet, and Burton has not joined us yet. So we have a quorum, however, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, so perhaps we need to begin. And so maybe we should.
All right. So do you want me to start with the presentation? Actually, we need to do a roll call.
That's what I was going to say. Heather's going to begin by showing us a presentation, and I prepared a document that I would like to share with all members of the CPC, because when I first joined the CPC, I didn't know what the rules were, what the expectations were, how to look things up. I just was thrown in cold turkey, and I found that I was constantly confused. So I've created a document for you that I think that Heather's going to share with everybody. That will give you the background for CPC, the rules the rules with which we engage. I'm going to share my screen and run through it very briefly after Heather does her work. But right now, let's call roll. And I don't have it in alphabetical order, so I'll just go around as I see my screen. And will you say how you've been appointed and by what authority? Tom, you want to start us?
Thanks, Diane. Tom Kearns, Select Board appointee.
Thank you, Tom. And Paul.
Paul Bohm, Recreation Commission appointee.
Thank you very much. And Charles, welcome. We can't hear you, Charles. You're muted. And our second live, we're all going to wear, no, we can't hear you, hon. You're muted. We're all going to wear big shirts, t-shirts. I'm sorry, you're muted.
Oh, no.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, Housing Authority appointee.
Thank you very much, Charles. And John?
I'm John Gratsley, a Select Board appointee.
Okay. And I noticed that we also do not have, there's one other member of the group that is not here besides Burton and Sarah. But we should begin, and perhaps Heather, you would start. And I'm Diane Proctor. I'm appointed by the Select Board, and this year I'm serving as the chair of the CPC.
And Diane, I might add, I'm Peter Ward, Vice Chair, Select Board appointee as well.
Gosh, Peter, that's what your phone sign is. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Peter.
Yeah, my bad for being on by teleconference.
No, but it's great to have you here. So that's what matters. Okay.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
We can.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So just a brief overview, the CPA in Concord, there's a 1.5% out of a possible 3% surcharge on real estate property tax bills. The first $100,000 of taxable value is exempt from the CPA. Persons with income less than 80% of area media income are exempt. Seniors with income less than 100% of area median income are also exempt. And locally raised funds are matched on a percentage basis by funds in the State Community Preservation Fund. There we go. And so here you can see over the years, the CPA property tax surcharge and the amount. For 2020, it was $183, and this was the median tax bill. And CPA funding goes to 5 categories, but 4 require a certain percentage. And those 4 main categories are community housing projects, which currently represent 22% of the projects that have been funded in Concord. Historic preservation represents 35% of the projects that have been funded by the town of Concord. Open space represents 17%. And recreation, which represents 24%. And here you can see the CPA state match over time. In 2006, when CPA was adopted by the town, we were still at 100% match by the state. As more and more towns have adopted CPA, that state match has gone down over time. And for 2021, we're estimating a 25% match by the state. And so some important dates to note for the CPA application process. Today, we're having our second public informational session. The next date to know is the big one, which is our application deadline, which is Friday, September 17th. Then we'll be conducting a group site visit to all of the applications that require a site visit, and that'll be taking place on Saturday, September 25th. Then we'll be conducting applicant interviews, which is when applicants will present their projects to the CPC and answer any questions that the committee may have. And those dates are October 5th, October 19th, and November 9th. We'll hold a public hearing on November 30th. And then we'll vote on recommendations around December 7th or the 21st. Some of these dates could change because I believe town meeting is a little bit later than normal. So we may vote sometime in January or February. But like the application deadline, that's something that's kind of stuck in stone. And we'll let you know if any of those other dates change if you do submit an application. And then I'm going to turn it over to Diane to do her presentation, and then we can take questions and presentations from potential applicants.
That's fantastic. Heather, would you put up what I sent you, please?
Yes.
Heather, I just have a question on the presentation. It's sort of,
Oh, that would be terrific. What is your question?
it's sort of in, Diane, it's in your category because I'm kind of a rookie. But you mentioned 4 categories, and maybe I missed it. Is there a 5th category that you alluded to, but you didn't specify?
Oh, I misspoke. There's 4 categories. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I was surprised when she said that too, Paul. I thought, what is the 5th category? Okay.
Sorry.
So, yeah, here's the community where all of our work is based on the Community Preservation Act, which enables participating communities to set aside tax revenue and the matching state funds for preservation of open space, creation of affordable housing, development of outdoor recreational facilities, and historic preservation. The CPC, the official language is, I seem to be, okay, the CPC Act is a smart growth tool that helps communities preserve open space and historic sites, create affordable housing, and develop outdoor recreation facilities. It also helps, and this is, I think, an interesting point that I didn't know before. It helps strengthen the state and local economies, and by supporting tourism industry through preservation of the Commonwealth's historic and natural resources. So there was a reason why the state legislature passed this. It was not just an act of generosity, but it was meant to also support the opportunity for development. Community preservation monies are raised locally. We could raise as much as 3% of our tax levy, but we only raise 1.5% by vote of the town meeting. On July 16th, I thought it was important, just very recently, that Governor Baker signed a state budget and included the budget as an amendment to the CPA legislation that allows for the acquisition of former railroad land using CPA funds. While CPA has always allowed funds to be used for the rail trail construction, this change now provides communities with the means to acquire. Can you move it down for me, hon? Thank you so much. To acquire land for the purposes of outdoor recreation. So that's a big change. There have been 12 different amendments to the original law. The Chapter 24, the Act 2021, the CPA allowed the acquisition of land for railroad purposes, and the one before that, the most recent one before that, was in 2019 to amend the fees collected at the state's registration of deeds to provide increased revenue for the CPA trust fund. And that's been a major source of income and an important thing for us to note. Now, there was a major article on the CPA site that says that that in November, the state distributed over $55 million. But the real issue here is that because of the home sales in the state, which have hit a 16-year high, and anybody who has children who are trying to buy a house, or have friends who are trying to buy a house right now, or who are trying to sell their house, or anything having to do with housing right now, realize prices have skyrocketed, and availability has also been extremely shared. So that's meant to give us a little bit more money this year and is anticipated. Evidence of this can be seen in the monthly CPA collection page, to which you'll receive this so you can look it up yourself. The revenue from the Registry of Deeds for November and December are 17% higher than they were last year. So all of this, I think, will give us a slightly more robust income. Now, what is allowable under our project? And this is really important. Projects are only eligible for CPA fund if they fit in a box with a green yes in the chart below. And so we can acquire land. You can see that across the line. We can create open space. We can create recreation. We can create housing, but we can't, obviously we cannot create historic documents. We can preserve open space. We can preserve historic buildings and preserve recreation and preserve housing. And we can support only housing. And all of this is important as we do our various deliberations. Now, as we look at the deeper deliberation of CPA's project categories, if you could go down for me one more time, Heather, thank you so much. CPA requires the community spend or set aside for future spending a minimum of 10% of their annual CPA revenues for each of the 3 following categories. We watch this pretty carefully as we move through the year. We want 10% for each of these 4 areas. And as you can see, the only place that was even slightly close was open space at 17%. Our most robust contribution last year and collectively has been in historic preservation. So the remaining 70% of the funds are undesignated and can be used for any allowable project in any of the CPA categories. So this is not an unimportant point to know as we move through, as we designate funds, a point that I think all of us need to keep in mind. Thank you, Heather. Would you move one more space down for us? Now, this is the detailed outline, and all, as I said, this document will be sent to each of you in your email. This is the open space designations, how we can use open space, what we can do, where open spaces are possible, what that means. And then if you keep going down, Heather, you'll see that each of the historic preservation and what happens there and what we can do. The same thing with community housing. The details are quite important for us to be aware of. And the last but not least is the recreation use. None of these has been particularly complicated for us. Probably the one that has been most complicated over the last couple of years has been the question of religious spaces, whether it was the UU Church or whether it was the Catholic Church, in terms of either historic preservation or mostly historic preservation. And I think that we've adjudicated that with care and caution, so that we have not run afoul of that in terms of state legislation and state strictures. And that's been an important thing for us to keep in mind. So given that, does anybody have any questions? Now you'll receive this document so that you can, in fact, head out on your own and look at things yourself and figure out the details. But it certainly helped me to know these things when I was first starting. And Heather, I hope you will tell us, you mentioned to me today, well, it's very easy. You just go to our site to see what the documents are. But when I went to the town government site, Concord town government site, CPC was not listed as one of the committees.
It's under boards and committees.
It's under boards and committees.
Mhm.
But
CPA.
CPA. I know that, hon. I know, Paul. Thank you very much, CPA. But I mean, it wasn't even listed, and under boards and committees, I didn't find it readily. So you might want to practice getting to that, figuring it out for yourself, so you can see the documents that are available. Because otherwise, like me, you'll be batting around rather blindly, as I did for the first 2 years I was on this committee. So I hope this helps you, and I hope it gives you a sense for what our challenges and tasks are ahead. It is my deepest hope that because last year we received some kickback money from people that had not spent it. And I had that figure right here at my fingertips, and I think it is, just a moment. I think we have an additional unexpended, oh Heather, where is it? $100 and some odd $1,000 that we will be able to add to whatever we receive from the state, which I hope will give us a more robust revenue stream to work on this year.
Mhm. Diane, if we're
Yes.
talking about I have a point of history which might be interesting for everybody, since you talk about the historical uses of the money. I was part of a ad hoc group of citizens back in 2000, well, when the CPA was first made available, and the town was not very enthusiastic about it. So this group of people actually presented a petition article to join the CPA, and it was turned down by town meeting. So the next year we came back again. I don't know whether it was a petition this time or whether it was the town itself, town government. But Joe Wheeler was the head of the group, and he said, you know, we better not go to our 3%, because we had trouble with it. So they reduced it. We only went with 1.5%. So we could get the town meeting to pass it. And that's where it's sat ever since.
That's very interesting, Charles, and illuminating, I think. Hold on just a minute. My computer has decided to do something on its own, and I will be right back with it. That's illuminating. I think that I don't think there has not been an appetite for increasing that, to my knowledge, Charles.
I think you're right.
But I'm glad we are at least at 1.5%. And I'm grateful for whatever endeavors you all exercise to get us at least to that far. Get us to that place.
Diane,
Paul, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions on the 4 categories. So first of all, I assume the 4 categories are defined by the act, right?
Yes, they are.
The legislation. Historically in our funding, the percentages that we saw in Heather's chart, have those remained fairly steady over time, or do those vary considerably? I'm just kind of curious about that.
Heather and John Kratzley may be able to answer that better than I, because they have the longest view on this, and Tom.
Since I've been here, those figures have remained in the same range that they're in now.
That's been my experience, Paul.
Yeah.
As well.
And thank you. And the last question, in describing the uses for recreation, it said something about can't be used for gymnasiums, and then there was a phrase, it was interpreted that it can only be used for outdoor recreation. Is that interpretation a town interpretation?
No.
Or
all of those are state interpretations. And Paul, one of the most interesting things I discovered in doing a deep dive into all of this is that for instance, let's say that the town, for some theoretical reason, decided that they wanted to build a new field and they wanted to use artificial turf. That's not allowed under the CPA. So it would have to be, you may not use artificial turf. And that was an amendment that was passed several years ago.
so is there more detail in the act itself, in the legislation?
Is
on
more
all that?
detailed. Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the 12 amendments that I didn't print all of them out because I thought that was cumbersome. I've got all of the connections to it. You just click on them and you'll go right to them. And you'll be able to see what the amendments have been. And you'll see that the turf issue was one that came up several years ago.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Paul. And that's a wonderful question. It's a very good question. Are there other questions? Thank you very, very much. Excuse me just 2 seconds. My computer is now functioning the way it should. Okay, I think the next item on our agenda are questions from prospective applicants. So I don't know which of the many people here, Anka, Helen, Anna, Court, Helen, Bill, I'd love to hear from you. So if you raise your hand, and you can do it either by just raising your hand and waving at us, or you can use the option of raise your hand, and I'll show you how that works just a minute so you can see how that works. I'm now raising my hand. And you can do that on, I'm now going to lower my hand. So if you do one or the other, either wave or raise your hand, that will give us a chance to hear what you're talking about. Court, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for hosting the meeting. We appreciate what you're doing, so thank you. The Thoreau Farm Trust, the nonprofit on Virginia Road, is working on a project with some town folks and Minuteman National Historical Park folks to hopefully build a trail that will connect the Battle Road Trail, the well-visited Battle Road Trail, with the Thoreau birthplace.
Wow.
It's an exceptional 0.8 of a mile north-south that has the enthusiastic support of the neighbors, insofar as town officials can express support pre-permitting. So of course, it's very conditional. There's a lot of enthusiasm about the concept, and the park is working closely with us. But we're still in the conception stage here. So I may be getting ahead of myself, but I'm curious. We see this as having tremendous educational benefit, both historical and environmental. And any and all partners are expressing those same interests. What does it mean to have a project that crosses those four boundaries and might land in open space recreation and or historic preservation? Or does historic preservation require four walls? And is it even highly relevant for an applicant to worry about it? A lot of questions.
Those are great questions. I'll answer them to the best of my ability and then turn to the rest of our committee court to respond. My experience has been we've often crossed boundaries and said this is actually historic in its impact, as well as open space in its impact, or recreational in its impact. And we've crossed boundaries many times. So that's not, in my experience, that's not difficult. In fact, it's advantageous, I would think. But let me turn to people who know more than I do, Tom or John or Heather.
Sure, I don't know more, but I agree. We often will split categories if that seems most relevant. And I don't think historic preservation is only buildings. That there's been work at the cemetery and other places that I think is also applicable. Even the maybe the Buttrick Gardens in most recently. So Heather probably has more good examples there. That sounds like a fantastic application.
It sure does.
Those sound like good precedents, Tom. Thank you.
I don't think you would have any problem, Court, in terms of establishing strong roots in terms of the past experience of the CPA here in Concord in supporting such an application.
Good. Thank you.
Terrific. Bill, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, I guess.
Good evening, Diane. So nice of you to host this. I'm sitting here on my porch reading Summer by Edith Wharton. It's just a wonderful.
Come on. I can't believe it. That's just way too, I'm envious.
But as you know, I was cut right to the point. You showed a picture when you were talking about recreation, and it showed some people riding on the Reformatory Trail on their bicycles. That's what I'd like to upgrade. I'm just 100 meters off it on Peter Spring Road, and absolutely enthusiastic about what I hear of adding a trail to Thoreau's birthplace. So anything I can do to help on that project, I'd be glad to. But I'd just like to have them come out and clip it and trim it. It just happens to, you have the picture there. And so I'll ask, is that a qualifying project?
What, to have it tripped, to have it trimmed and refined in some way?
That's right. The Midnight Trails Committee is pretty active on it and addresses basic safety issues like line of sight. But when you start getting into trees that are 2 or 3 inches in diameter, that someone riding could accidentally hit and be spilled. There's some places where it's less than 3 meters wide. And just basic safety improvements of have the examine it with the tree warden and have the tree truck drive down one day and just make some basic clearing. The whole major development can come later in another generation, perhaps. But for the moment, the traffic's increasing and we're getting electric bicycles, and basic safety improvements would not cost much and be a good thing.
Bill, that's so interesting. For those of you who don't know, he's an avid biker. So this does not come in a vacuum.
That's why we moved here.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I can answer that question. I know we have agencies in town that are meant to address that. But let's see, Paul, you seem to have a thought.
Yeah, just a piece of information, because my daughter is on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee. And I know, and you may know, Bill, that they have been discussing, and I don't know the depth of extending or incorporating the reformatory trail into the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail system. I don't know anything about the details of that, but and I do know the things you're talking about: safety, access, and abutters interest. As you know, that's taken into account by the Rail Trails Committee. So I think there are some discussions on that matter. Now, the funding, I think the CPC has funded rail trail, Bruce Freeman Rail Trail.
Oh, we certainly have.
efforts. So the funding could come through here, but the operation of that goes through the Trails Committee, Bruce Freeman Rail Trail.
Yeah, I think Marcia Rasmussen can answer this. Hi, Marcia.
Yeah,
Thank you
of
for
course you
joining
can.
us.
Evening. Thank you, Diane. Yes, I can answer part of it. Having been working on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail for a number of years.
Yes, I would say so.
The source of funds have come from a variety of different entities, including the Community Preservation Act funds. The reformatory branch is entirely owned by the town of Concord. So whatever effort goes forward has to have the permission from the town manager, and he would have to sign such an application. In the past, we've had funding provided through the Friends of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. They submitted actually the first application that did the initial feasibility study and the beginning of the 25% design. So there are a series of steps that need to proceed before there's any, before we get too far down that road, down that path. But I know that the select board is thinking about or has been talking about appointing a specific committee to the reformatory branch, not asking the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee to take on a new project, but because I think that there is a lot of neighborhood interest and community-wide interest in that particular path. So I think there is interest, and that seeking funding through the Community Preservation Act is one of the potential resources that would be available to people.
Absolutely, and Marcia speaks the truth. There's much community interest in that particular trail. I think and I don't think I speak out of turn, Bill, when I say there are a lot of people concerned that it might be paved. And they certainly, and a lot of people feel that it's way too precious a natural resource to be paved.
Hold on, guys. Understand the scope of what I'm saying.
Yeah, just
Basic day-to-day safety. Sure. Yeah. My dream is also to run it right through Mashotic Hill out to the Rotary and have a collection. But in the meantime, I think it's important to keep people safe, and widening it up in certain places will allow for both a cross-country ski trail and snowshoeing and walking trails. We had a wonderful winter. I skied all the way to Lexington and back a couple of times this winter. So that's another perspective to look at it. But just simple stuff. There are line of sight issues that could be addressed.
That's fantastic. And if you could put together a proposal that detailed the needs and where those needs are, I think it was something that we could consider. We could actually ask the town if they would take on that responsibility. I mean, there's a kind of a mutual reciprocity that goes on between the town budget and what they do and what CPC funds. So, I mean, I think you've opened up a very important area for discussion. Tom?
Yeah, thanks, Diane. I think there just may be a consideration about an application is potentially developed around routine maintenance and a program initiative. Absolutely. Typically, the CPC funds are not applied to kind of general routine maintenance, but it sounds like there could be a vision around widening it or having it, really respond to the kind of use it's getting. And, you may just develop the program statement to be more focused in that direction.
Something that enables the 25% design to get going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, the person who knows and can help you on this, Heather Gill. And as you try to craft a proposal, speaking with Marcia and Heather will be a great advocate for you. But it's
Unfortunately, there's a plane coming in. I missed everything, but we can go further into it in the future.
okay. Well, let me know. And what I was going to say is that, just communicating with Heather and Gil and we're communicating with Marcia will help you to refine whether this is something that is going to be appropriate for CPC or something you need to take to the select board and say, hey, this is something that needs to be in the town budget next year.
And I find them at, where do I contact these people? Is there?
If you email me, Bill, I will give you those emails. Just send me a note and I'll send you Marcia's and Heather's and people on the select board's emails. Okay.
I wanted to talk to you about Henry James anyway. Thank you so much.
And I'm envious of your Wharton reading, of course.
It's the perfect time of year to read that book, and it's only 100.
It certainly is.
Yeah. Good night.
Anka, good morning.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having this meeting. And
Anka, will you introduce yourself for those who don't know you because you're
sure. And is my sound up enough? Can you hear me?
Terrific.
Now it's too loud. So sorry. Yes, my name is Anka Ross, and I'm the Curator of Special Collections at the Concord Free Public Library. And I started my position in the fall of 2019. And I've been working at the library almost all through COVID. So all the wonderful folks at the library have actually been in the library, even if you haven't seen them. For over a year, we've all been on site. We were only working from home for about 4 months, and the rest of the time we've been on site. So, anyways, it's a wonderful place, and Concord is a wonderful, supportive community. So I'm very grateful to be here, and I hope you come visit me in Special Collections.
We're grateful to have you here, Anka.
Thank you. So my question is what really piggybacks on an earlier question is the historic preservation category, I know it's not brick and mortar, but it's outside and it's nature and recreation. Is historic defined as the physical environment only?
I would not say so, Anka, but again, I'm going to turn to people who know more than I do. Your whole world, of course, is historic preservation, in terms of archival work. Right. And it seems to me that's at the nexus. I mean, as a scholar, I would say that that's the nexus of all that we do, is to be able to preserve, the historical artifacts and documents that to which people can eventually turn to understand what's happened historically in our town or in a broader environment. So my sensibility would be that the work that you do falls, squarely in the target of historic preservation. But let me hear some other voices on this. Are there some other commentary from those?
And I'm happy to tell you a little more about it because it's actually quite unique. So what's unique about it is actually preserving part of our collection that is actually owned by the town of Concord and created under the direction of both the library and the Historic Commission, and that is the Oral History Program of Concord. And Concord has, conducted oral histories ever since Renee Gerlich initiated that program, and it's been going on for many years, and different projects have been built on top of her initial work. Currently, there are about 100 oral histories that have been digitized those oral histories are available on our website along with a transcript. But one of the big projects that I've been working on throughout COVID is doing a lot of inventorying of projects and trying to prioritize things that have been put on the back burner because there are always other priorities. But in addition to the 100 oral histories that are on our website, we have close to 400 oral histories that are currently only available on cassette tape. And these include, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to watch some of the episodes of Concord Stories that I've been doing during COVID. This is a virtual series that I do through Special Collections, and I've interviewed, I think, 7 different individuals. And one person I interviewed was Bill Bailey. And Bill and I met just before everything shut down. And Bill told me about the fact that he worked with Renee to conduct oral histories of immigrants in Concord. And he has over 60 oral histories that he conducted of Irish, Russian, Norwegian, and other individual immigrants in Concord. And those cassettes those interviews are on cassette only, along with many other oral history projects. There was a veterans project, different projects. And again, those oral histories are only on cassette. I'd be very, very interested to help and support the town in getting these oral histories digitized so we can put them online so people can listen to them. Because it's a piece of history that's not covered in many of our primary sources. And these are wonderful resources and will, fill a really important gap.
I've seen some of them and they're absolutely fantastic, Anka, but let me hear other people. It seems a very appropriate project from my perspective. May I hear other commentary from the committee? Tom?
Well, I just, Anka, as you were describing this really compelling opportunity, I went onto the coalition website and it's in front of me here. It says CPA funds can be used for the acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of historic resources. And then it goes to defining of historic resources. They must be either one, the historic resource must be listed in the Massachusetts State Register of Historic Places, or it must be determined by the local historical commission that the historic resource is locally significant. So maybe there's a little bit of a test here, and it may go to the historical commission in that regard, who we often partner with and look to for guidance. But anyway, that's just a quick checkup. It's a really interesting question, but I think, Paul and Heather and others may have better perspective.
Well, I just have a question, and maybe premature, but what's the nature of the project that you'd be conceiving and looking for funding? Is it, and you talk about digitizing, is it staffing? Is it hard? What would be the nature? It
would be outsourced. It's much quicker to outsource. And so I have already, and I know that, in order for it to be funded with an outside vendor, I would have to get 3 different quotes. So we can evaluate, the different quotes. And so I've already started doing that just to have that information. And this is Boston or Massachusetts or New England. There are lots of historic and heritage organizations, colleges and universities, all of which are very much involved in also migrating a lot of historical content that's, either on paper or in print or on video or on cassette, and migrating it to a more modern platform. So there are lots of vendors just here in Massachusetts who would be a good choice.
So in terms of the process, and there's a question more for Tom and Diane, it sounds like a 2-step process. I mean, committee was, we offer support, but then Anka would have to go out to determine exactly what the funding requirements are. Am I thinking of that appropriately?
The funding requirements and a sense from the HDC that this is indeed an historical artifact of value to be preserved.
Yeah, historical commission, maybe not HDC, but yes, Historical Commission. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the HC, Historical Commission, thank you.
Yeah.
'Cause there are two of them, the Historical Commission, spot on.
Right.
So, Anka, does that help?
Oh, that's wonderful. And thank you very much. And look forward to my application.
Fantastic. Other people who have thoughts or questions they'd like to ask? Okay, seeing none. We need to approve some minutes from June 29th. So
I think Marcia has application she wanted to present.
I don't see her hand up, so
I
I
was
did.
going to ask Marcia if she could give us a hint,
Yes,
being a regular.
And I did put out the call today to the Recreation Department, and I have been in conversation with other members of my staff, Delia Kay and Elizabeth Hughes. So I'm Marcia Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management, and a frequent flyer of the Community Preservation Act. So I appreciate very much being here tonight. And I did prepare a memo that Heather does have available, and she can distribute it to you, and we'll post it on your website after tonight's meeting. But the first project that we're working on right now is a land acquisition project for open space and for housing purposes. We're very excited. We have only had some initial conversations, but have a meeting. Delia Kay has organized a meeting for next week. So we're going to talk with our partners about how we share in the costs and the fundraising that might be necessary for that. But it's a 5-acre parcel between the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail and the Assabet River. It has some upland portion that would be suitable for housing purposes, community housing, and of course, riverfront that's right along the Assabet River where trails may be possible. So we are in conversation about that. The asking price is 2.8 million. And I don't know exactly what the request will be made from the CPC, but we're in conversation right now with several partners to figure that out. The second project is the Assabet River Multi-Use Bridge, the pedestrian bridge that will connect Concord Park with 300 Baker Ave, and we are in negotiation with 300 Baker Ave to bring an easement out to Baker Ave itself. So it will be from the train station to Baker Ave. And by having that public to public access point, there may be construction funding that would be available through the state, but the town would be responsible for design. You have previously provided some funding, and then we sought a grant through the Mass Trails program. The remaining money that is needed for the design is about 225,000. And we would again seek funding through the Mass Trails program. So it will be somewhere in that vicinity or less. A third project that I have been working on with the Junction Village Open Space Task Force is the design of the open space that is associated with the Christopher Heights assisted living project off of Winthrop Street. There's about 6 acres that is former Department of Corrections land. Some of it has been used and abused there with some dumping and so forth. We're working to get that cleaned up, and then to create some trails that would connect in a loop to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail and be usable and accessible for the community and for for the Christopher Heights development. I do not yet have an estimated cost. It would probably be phased over a couple of years, maybe several years. But the task force has a landscape architect that they are working with, and we'll have a follow-up meeting in early September. So there may be an application there. Our standard items, Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, of course. This is a range. There was some additional design required for the last half mile from Powder Mill Road to the Sudbury Town line. And we are currently, we've provided that design. We're getting feedback right now from Mass DOT. And then there's a follow-up meeting scheduled for next week. to discuss the aspects of the trail. We have proposed fencing along both sides of the trail to protect White Pond and and there's a vernal pool in that area, and so that it's for the safety of the trail users. But then we've also proposed a wood fence along the westerly side of the trail as a reminder to people that they should be staying on the trail, on the path itself. So if the state says that is a non-participatory feature, the town would be responsible for constructing that fence. And so that's going to be part of the conversation next week. I don't know what the outcome will be. Additionally, there are locations where some additional landscaping, some additional signage. We've been in conversation with Department of Corrections about acknowledging the prison cemetery that was not part of the Phase 2B project. But there's some really exciting historic aspects of the trail that we hope to highlight. And so I will definitely be seeking a small amount of money for that, maybe around $50,000. And then our usual, the Regional Housing Services Office, we'd like to continue to support community housing. They've done a phenomenal job. We will be working with the Regional Housing Services Office and a consultant to update our planned production plan this year. Actually, the RFP is out and proposals are due this Thursday. So I'll be able to report to you in September the status of that project. But we'll continue our request for sharing the funding for the Regional Housing Services Office between the town budget and the Community Preservation Act. And then finally, the Community Preservation Administrative Funds. This goes to support your group with any legal services that may be necessary, with any research that may be necessary, and to provide the signs for acknowledging community preservation funds for the different groups. So that's my list. And I know Anna McCown is here. She may have some projects that the Recreation Department is looking at. I think a recreation master plan update and some funding for the Emerson Pool. So Anna?
Yeah, hi, thanks everybody. Sorry, I'm going to spare you and not turn my video on right now. But yes, thanks for that introduction, Marcia. I'm Anna McEwen. I'm the Director of Recreation. And we have a handful of projects, some bigger than others, that we're considering. As Marcia said, we've had some ongoing issues with the outdoor pool at Emerson Park. That's definitely in need of more than the Band-Aids we've been able to provide it. So that's one project. We've also toyed around with looking at some of our current courts that need resurfacing. So the basketball courts at Emerson Park haven't been touched in quite a while. So that is on the list, as well as the updating of the recreation facilities strategic plan. So the last plan was published in 2014, and the Recreation Commission has started to work on creating a draft scope of work to look for consultants that might be able to help us pursue the project. So those are the ones that are on our forefront primarily right now. And we'll definitely be submitting an application for at least one, if not two, of those projects.
Thank you, Anna, so much. And thank you, Marcia. These are long and robust requests, but it's good to have an advanced sensibility for the needs that you're anticipating.
Yeah.
Are there other public comments of any kind that may be directed toward the conversation we've had so far? Seeing no hands, then we go on to other business, which includes the minutes for June 29th, 2021. I don't think I was there, so I can't comment on them. But does anybody have any emendations to those? Okay, seeing none, does anybody wish to recommend that they be accepted?
I move that we approve the minutes of June 29th, 2021.
Thank you, Peter. Do I hear?
second that. I'll second that.
Thank you, Paul. All in favor, please raise your hands. I actually have to do a roll call, don't I, Tom?
Heather, yeah, looks like it.
Tom, do you accept?
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Charles?
Abstain. I didn't attend the meeting long enough.
Okay, and Peter?
Yes.
Yes, and I abstain, but I think that's a yes, Heather. So you're all set. Thank you very much. And thank you for doing those minutes. Heather is a fabulous administrative assistant to our efforts, and we are grateful for everything she does. If I hear no further business, I want to thank, oh, go ahead.
There was one, you had me add the town meeting calendar that was just approved.
Oh,
I don't know
thank
if
you. I
wanted
added
to review
it. I
that.
added it because I wanted us to see it. The town meeting calendar will give us, I hope Heather will send that to us again, each of us, a copy of this along with the document that I put together for us. And it's an important document for us to be aware of. The January 8th is the town meeting preview meeting. And that's when the warrant opens. And then the draft warrant articles are due on January 28th. So those are issues that pertain to us particularly as a committee. And to which we need to pay, attention, to say the least. And then the town meeting itself is April 22nd. Wait, that's not it. It's further down than that. The town meeting is May 1st. And let us hope that we're not going to be in COVID distress and that we can all gather together. But if we can't, and in the meanwhile, those are deadlines and dates that have been confirmed by the select board, and Heather will provide a copy of that for all of us to use guiding our deliberations and our plans as we move ahead. Thank you, Heather, so much. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting? Because we know that John has a dinner.
So moved.
How do we do, John? We almost hit your 8 o'clock deadline.
Well, excellent meeting.
Well,
Very, very informative about new projects.
yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it, John?
Yeah, Diane, great job.
Thank you, Tom. John moves that we adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Tom?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Charles?
Aye.
Aye, and we've lost Peter. And I.
Nope. Peter's here.
Oh, there you are, up there in the left-hand corner. Hi, Peter. Yay. Okay. Thank you all very, very much. And I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting when we will be doing some pretty serious work. So yes, thank you, John. Have a good rest of the summer, everybody. Enjoy yourself and please stay healthy, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Heather.